Pull up a chair and buckle up. It's the Original Strength Podcast.
Hey kids, welcome to the Original Strength Podcast. I am your host, Tim, and I am also the guest today. Also, still Tim. It is October, so this would actually, and I don't know why, but this would start a new season of podcast for us here on the BodCast. So we are now, because it's October, in season 5. A lot has happened since I last had a podcast with myself. Last time, I had talked about I was going to Australia to lead a retreat called Train Like Tim. And I did go to Australia, and the goal was to lead a retreat called Train Like Tim off the coast of Brisbane on a small island called, I'm not going to get this name right. They call it Coochie for short. It was a beautiful island. So we'll call it the Isle of Coochie. No coup. There was no coup, but we'll call it the Isle of Coochie. So yeah, I flew. So here's the story, kids. I flew to Australia. It was a 20 hour. Yeah, definitely 20 hours in a plane. Got to Australia like a day in the future. It's so weird when you time travel, it totally messes you up. And I tried to stay awake all day to get acclimated to Australian time. And right before I went to bed in Australia, which I had been up for a very long time, and it was like 14 hours ahead of my time because I was still in the future. But right before I went to bed in the future, what had happened at the same time in the past back home is that my mom suffered a pretty massive stroke. And my sister sent me a text right before I went to bed that, hey, mom's at the ER. And needless to say, I was hoping for a migraine because it was early on in the game. And man, I just wanted to sleep. But now I had this news, and it was kind of hard to sleep. So every few hours I'd wake up to these texts from my sister, keep me in the loop. And it didn't look good. Mom had a brain bleed. It was inoperable. And she was in a neural ICU. And well, so Australia sucked. It didn't, but it did, because it did. So I was like, man, I was just really, I was so tired. And then I had that like heavy news, and obviously I could not sleep. And then, the next day I'm like just a shell. Like I'm like, man, what do I do? I just got here. The thought of another 20-hour plane ride itself was like brutal. But I wanted to be with my mom. And so I didn't know what to do. And my wife had gone to the hospital. She was also on a trip, but she was close. She was on the, other side of the world back in time, back in the past, which was where my sister and my mom were. So my wife had gone to the hospital, and she was keeping me in the loop. And she's like, hey, there's really nothing for you to do here right now. Why don't you plan to come home early, but try to do your retreat as best you can? So I was really, and it sucked because I really wanted to come home, and I didn't. I was a shell of a person. So the next night, I tried to go to sleep, but because I was in the future, my midnight, the middle of my night, was their day. So every time I'd wake up, like every hour, every 2 hours, I was getting these texts of everything that was happening, and I was physically uncomfortable. It sucks so bad. And I'm telling you guys all of this because there were some bright spots in the Isle of Coochie. But so still not knowing what to do. And like, I was not supposed to come home for like, I was supposed to be there for 10 days, and I just got there, right? Supposed to be there for 10 days. The retreat was going to be from Wednesday to Sunday. I got there Monday. So Tuesday was my first full day of nothingness, or just sitting around thinking about mom before the retreat started. And I was miserable. I could not even stand being in my own skin. It was a very, very sucky feeling. And so I sent a text to my friend Trey, and you might remember Trey if you ever watched the podcast about the float tank. Trey and I did an episode. Two heretics and a cup of coffee did an episode about the float tank, and I asked Trey what I should do, and Trey said he sent me this short text: "Be physically where you psychologically are. Go home." And that was a man. That was a good text. So what I did is I decided I got on American. My wife said, "Hey, do the best you can at the retreat for the first few days." So I got on American Airlines and I booked a flight out on Friday. But still, I had to go to the Isle of Coochie. So I went to the Isle of Coochie, and this was so weird. If you've ever wondered if heaven and hell could exist or you could be there at the exact same time, you absolutely can. What should have been such a beautiful paradise was it was kind of torture. So, oh my gosh, it was gorgeous, but my mind was on the other side of the world. But I had something to do, right? Like I was there. I figured I can't. I trust my wife. She had my back, and she's like, do the best you can. So while I was there, to train like Tim was supposed to be about, becoming bulletproof, about feeling safe in who you are, so that you can express your full potential. And honestly, so for 3 days, I did the best I absolutely could to teach what I had, and most of it was from the book that I had just written, that I had told you guys about. By the way, the title seems to be, right now we're leaning towards, the majority of responses have been, call it Being You. So I'm not 100% sure it's going to be called Being You, but it could very well end up being called Being You. Anyway, so I was actually like trying to float that material because it seemed appropriate at the time. Along with some of the Becoming Bulletproof project material. And honestly, I was just seeing what would happen because of where I was in my own state. I just didn't know, how it would go. But I think it went okay. Most of the participants, like I don't know that they knew about my mom until the last day. So I was supposed to, the retreat was not supposed to end until Sunday, but on Friday I was leaving. So Friday morning, I told everybody what was going on. And it was kind of neat because everyone was so nice and understanding. And that was a weird thing because like I don't know if you've ever done strength finders. One of my very top strength is responsibility. And I felt like that if I left early and everybody was there to train like Tim, but Tim wasn't there, well, that's weird. And these people took, they invested money, they took a vacation. They all came to this island off the coast of Australia to train like Tim. And Tim felt like he was letting everybody down because Tim's a big baby. Anyway, so my sense of responsibility was like, I didn't want to let people down, but I wanted to be at home because, even though I'm a grown up, I'm just a big kid. And this big kid, his mom was sick. So I told everybody about my mom, and wow, well, so they just loved me. And here's my point to this long, weird story that I'm just using you as a therapist, but hopefully it's helpful to you too. Everybody there, they love me. So if you were at the Train Like Tim on the Isle of Coochie, thank you very much. But my point to that is because they loved me, I felt safe. And that was the whole point of what was to be the whole point of the Train Like Tim retreat, was to feel safe, so that you could express your full potential. And throughout the week they did, and some of them did know. One of them, my friend Pierce, his mom, she actually she came to my hotel room one day. She knew something was wrong, and she's like, and Pierce told her what was wrong because I was staying with Pierce, and she's like, I just want to pray for you. And that felt so good. I felt safe. So thank you, Heather. Anyway, so all of that to say, when you feel loved, you feel safe. And when you feel safe, you can do just about anything. Short story is I got on a plane Friday night. I flew home. Saturday morning, I got home, got to see my mom. It's 2 weeks later, 2.5 weeks later. She is recovering, but and we're fortunate that she's with us. So that's a blessing. Unfortunately, mom is going to do more crawls and crawling than she would ever care to do. But because I know she can heal, and because I know that crawls and crawling are so good for the brain, my mom is going to be a crawling champion. And she can get herself back. Anyway, guys, that's where we're at. A very good Debbie Downer first episode of season 5. Can you be in heaven and hell at the same time? Yeah, you can. It's still a choice, though. There were moments, I had brief pockets when I was teaching where I felt like I was in heaven. They were brief. And soon after I was done teaching, I feel like I was in hell again. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So I've heard. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, guys, hey, thanks so much for listening. We're friends. That's just what I'm sharing. And really, I write and I do stuff like this to process my emotions and work things out. So thank you for being my therapist today. Anyway, and for those of you that have helped try to name the book, hey, thank you so much. I am now really excited because I actually got to see how the material played out in some very interesting circumstances and looked pretty good. I think it went well. Hey, but not to be a complete Debbie Downer. Hope to have some good shows for you coming up this year. I know that we'll get some really exciting guests, and if nothing else, we'll get to hear me ramble about weird things like the difference between a Hindu push-up and a dive bomber. Just made that video. It's weird that I felt compelled to make the video because everyone's telling me I'm doing the Hindu push-up wrong because I'm not reversing it. But that's a different push-up. It's called the dive bomber push-up. Anyway, so we have a video coming out soon highlighting the differences between two different types of push-ups that are not the same. Hopefully that will be a very entertaining, if not educational video that maybe someone will enjoy. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for listening. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Now get outside and play.